firmly believe that all children, regardless of disability, should fly up and away. It's the natural progression of life to separate from the family and follow the path to adulthood. I knew when my son was 10 years old that he'd never be able to fly alone. At that time, there were absolutely no services available to individuals with autism as they exited the educational system. Most adults were consigned to institutions where they at best merely existed and at worst were severely neglected and abused. I vowed that my son would never enter an institution. I began with other mothers, meeting in my living room, talking about our children, about their needs, and their bleak futures. We together visited social services, our representatives from state and national and local levels, to complain about the dearth of services. Nobody disagreed with us. They all said, "You're right. Somebody ought to do something. Somebody ought to do something." Well, that phrase took me back to my childhood. My father frequently said, "Somebody left her shoes in the living room. Somebody needs to take out the trash. Somebody better walk that dog." And so I knew I am somebody. I said, "I'll start a community-based service. I will use my parent power." Looking back, I was rather presumptuous. I had no experience. I had no means, no friends with means, no political connections, no financial connections, no business plan. I barely knew what a business plan was. But oh, I had motivation. Motivation to provide an environment for my son that would last him for a lifetime. Motivation to give him wings. There were meetings and meetings and more meetings. We held a trial residential program in a summer camp, and the verdict was clear. If it can succeed in a cabin in the woods with no running water, it could succeed anywhere. A program is built on its staff and that staff's training. Housing is incidental. Then a roadblock came up. Prospective funders, because autism was considered then to be a low incidence handicap, all insisted they needed an epidemiological survey. The cost was prohibitive, $10,000 we didn't have. This one stumped me for about a month. So then I finally buckled down and wrote my own. I was going to school for my master's degree in education, and the survey or study became my thesis. My professor loved it, and to my amazement, every prospective funder accepted it without question. A proposal for seed money for a residential service was prepared with the promise that if funded, I would pin the responsibility for long-term funding where it belonged, on the state of Maryland. A foundation gave $20,000, our county gave $30,000, and after months of haggling with our state funders, they finally turned loose of $10,000 end-of-year money. So we were ready. Now for the housing. Well, at that time, an organization could not rent an apartment, certainly not for a group home. So another mother and I went to a local complex and said, "My son's 21 years old. He wants to move out. He wants to live with 2 friends. Of course, he has no credit, so I'll be responsible. I'll sign for everything." And thus, we obtained 2 apartments. We scrounged secondhand furniture, and then we were ready for staff. Well, the only office we had was my kitchen. So we did our interviews sitting in the living room of an apartment. Many of our applicants, is my sound on okay? Okay. Many of our applicants had worked in institutions and they were very proud of their physical abilities. Without the slightest provocation, they would drop to the floor and demonstrate a 4-point restraint. Well, we were impressed, but not the way they thought we were. So for our first 4 counselors, we chose an office worker, a psych student, a convenience store clerk, and a recently divorced 50-year-old housewife. The training's times, and we were set. We admitted 3 young men directly from an institution, and 3, including my own son, came from their homes. On the day that we opened, I knew we did not have enough money to last through the state's fiscal year. Many told me not to start, that it would be a disgrace to the community-based service movement if we failed. But I had faith that a good program would not be allowed to die. So when we were close to the end of our time on enough money, I went to the state and told them we needed just a little bit more to get through. Oh, a firestorm. They were so angry. They insisted they couldn't find another cent, but we were intransigent. And so they found a little bit more money, and CSAAC lived. CSAAC has lived for 31 years. Today, my son is one of 115 adults who has served in supported employment and live in 52 group homes scattered site around Montgomery County. We have a school for 35. We have after-school and in-home support services, a preschool, and intensive early intervention. Parents do have power, and they need to use that power to create and demand the very best of services for their children. Today, life for our family is as it should be. My son calls his apartment home. My home is a place to visit.